Hey everyone, welcome to the Naked Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Sage Hobbs, author and creator of Naked Communication, and I'm so psyched you're here. This show is all about taking charge of your life in new and inspired ways to create a life you deeply love. It's about being more you in all areas of your life, more courageous, more free, more alive, more naked. I'll be sharing stories and advice from amazing people around the world who are up to incredible things on how they are successfully breaking free from fear and old patterns in order to create incredible relationships and impactful lives so that you can do the same. This is the place to be inspired to live a courageous and naked life. Let's do this. Hello. I'm so psyched you're back to Naked Conversations. Can't wait to introduce you to today's guest, the amazing top psychic, Shannon Walbran from South Africa. But before I do that, I just want to make sure that you know about all the happenings and goings on within the Naked Conversations community. If you are not already over there in the Facebook group, we'd love to see you over there. Just go to sagebhobbs.com/Facebook. And you can ask questions and meet other people who are really on this journey to be more self-expressed and powerful in the world. And if you've been digging on these podcasts and you have not yet read the book, Naked Communication, totally check it out. I'm told that it is very easy and funny and helpful, directly helpful, which I'm proud of that part. It's on Amazon. You can also find it on my website at sagebhobbs.com. That is Naked Communication, courageously create the relationships you really want. So without further ado, we have Shannon on the show today, and it has been such a delight to get to know her more. We laughed hard. I learned so much. Shannon was born in the United States and grew up in Minneapolis, but now lives in South Africa, where she is South Africa's top psychic. She's often on the radio over there. She's written a book called Guided. She has distilled wisdom through guides and angels to thousands of individuals over the years and has incredibly funny, smart, and insightful things to say about what it really means to be a psychic, which I was really curious about because I was really a psychic virgin in a lot of ways. I've done a lot of things and explored a lot of things and met with healers in Brazil and lots of things like that. But directly talking to a psychic was super eye-opening for me, and I really enjoyed our conversation. We get into what it was like for her to tell her Catholic Minneapolis family that she's in fact psychic and that she is going to pursue that path and how they responded or didn't respond to that news. We talked about how she was a sensitive and spiritual person since childhood and what that was like and how that was a challenge until it really became her greatest gift. She's had careers in journalism, documentary filmmaking, nonprofit sector, and she's traveled to over 48 countries around the world, which I find so deeply fascinating in and of itself. We talk about how the experience of being a translator in various countries also helped her have the ability to translate psychic messages. We also talked about how we're all psychics and how we can unveil and unleash some of that within ourselves. So I'm super psyched for you to also learn from Shannon today. And if you, like me, are a bit of a psychic virgin, get ready to really have an experience that is both informative and fun. Can't wait to introduce you. Let's do this. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Naked Conversations podcast. I'm so excited to introduce you to today's guest, Shannon Walbran. She is a psychic. And as we begin to talk, you will learn how I'm going to geek out with all of my own questions around what it really means to be a psychic and how she came to do this work in the world. So I'm super psyched to have this conversation with Shannon and share it with all of you. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Sage. Thanks for having me.
Hi. And another fun fact is that she's around the world in South Africa. So I'm over here in Colorado.
And I don't even sound like it. Yeah.
I know.
I feel like I'm right next door to you in Colorado. Thank God for technology.
I know. It's amazing. Actually, one of my questions for you will be about how you landed there. But before that, just tell us a little bit about what you do.
I help high vibration women get messages from their own angels and guides. Full stop. So that's really what I do. And there are a lot of questions that will pop up from that, like who are high vibration women? Who are angels and guides? Why does anybody need help? Shouldn't we just be able to do this on our own? And the answer to the last one is yes, we are able to do this on our own. And so really, I give people messages in order for them to hear what the messages sound like so that they can do it on their own, because we all can. You don't have to have a special gift.
Oh my gosh, that's so interesting. Okay, so let's break this down a little bit. So before we started recording, I said I'm kind of a psychic virgin.
Yay!
So meaning I've heard
of... Have you never, ever been to a psychic in your whole life?
Never. Never been to a psychic.
No.
I don't know.
What
I
about
mean,
like a fortune teller in a tent at a circus?
never.
Nothing?
No, I mean, I've been to a healer in Brazil, a famous healer in Brazil who like channeled.
Famous one? Who's the famous one?
João de Deus, John of God.
You went to John of God? Oh,
I
that's
did.
amazing.
I did, and it was incredible.
I lived in Brazil for 3.5 years, and I really liked living in Brazil. It was one of my best countries ever.
Oh, really? Cool. I loved it.
Yeah.
I was there for about, how long were we there? Probably 2.5 weeks. It was really special. The experience of Brazil was beautiful. Yeah. So I don't think he would say he's a psychic. He would say he was like a channeling healer. And
He's a healer.
Yeah, he's a healer.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So break it down for us lay folk. And, my listeners are on the spectrum of woo, right? So I'm going to have some who are more into the divine ideas and others who might already be like, what? So I would like you to break it down. Like, what is a high vibrational woman? And tell us a little bit more about what psychic really means to you.
Okay. What psychic means to me is someone who can hear or receive messages or vibrations from the divine intelligence and then give those messages to somebody else. So I'd like to make a distinction right away that I'm not a medium. A medium is someone who speaks to deceased people, whether it's your own relatives, maybe it's your own grandparents, or if you lost a brother or something like that, then a medium can speak to people who are past. And that could be somebody like John Edwards who does the Crossing Over show. And also the lady who is the Long Island medium. She's somebody who can speak. These are famous people. These are people who can speak to dead people. And that is what I don't do at all. So what I do is I speak to your angels and guides and saints. And I come from a very strongly Catholic background. So I was raised Roman Catholic from my birth, from baptism. And I even went all the way through university. I went to a Catholic university. And so some people, they kind of give up when they're 12 or 13 and they go, okay, I got confirmed and then that's it. But I kept going and going and going. So I really did study and I studied theology. But I have a great respect for other religions as well. And I did a Buddhist phase of my life where I actually, went to India and learned about Buddhism. And I also had a very strong Jewish phase of my life in which I almost converted. I kept kosher. I lived in, different places and I went to Jerusalem and I sat at yeshiva. So I really do have a lot of respect for other religions as well. But based on my own Christianity and my own Catholicism, and based on every religion I've ever studied, there is a divine intelligence who is benevolent and who is helping us in many, many ways.
Got it. Wow. You have gone deep into, I have a million questions for you. My little brain is going ding, 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 ding. But you've
one, number 2, 1,000,001. Okay,
I love it
ready.
so much. I mean, you've gone really, really deep into a lot of experiences, it seems to me. Like if you're going to India to study directly, you're going to Israel and studying directly, and you've really done some deep dives to have you be where you are now, right? So,
well, Sage, I'm older than you, by a long shot. So
no, you're not. We are.
maybe someday when you're as old as I am, then... No, I'm joking with you because you just told me that it was your birthday. So I'm 48 years old and I've been to 48 countries. And I hope to make that at least now going forward 1 new country per year. And in each of those countries, not when I first started out when I was young, but now in each of those countries, I go for spiritual reasons. And I go to seek out the people who live there and the places that are there that are sacred places.
I love it so much. Okay, so tell me how you came to do this. How did this come to be that you identified as a psychic yourself, as somebody who could hear messages from the divine?
Yep.
And then...
Yeah, go ahead, you.
Well, and then I just want to make sure I'm clear. So you hear messages from the divine, and you're able to share those with people, but you want eventually for us to be able to hear our own messages.
Eventually. How about right now? Why wait?
Okay.
Yes, right now.
Love it.
So the different kinds of gifts are called the clairs. So the psychics like to talk about the clairs. So there's clairaudient, clairvoyant, clairsentient, claircognizant. Maybe you've heard of those?
Yeah, I have.
Clairvoyant. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and different people have different gifts. So there's even a reading. How were you raised? Were you raised Christian or something else?
You just made me realize I actually have met a psychic and she's lovely, but I never had her do a reading for me. But you just brought it back to me.
Yeah, we're not all bad, are we?
No, she's awesome. I was raised pretty agnostic. I have an interesting, my mother is Jewish. And so by a Jewish faith, that would make me Jewish. But her, whatever, she was not raised in that. And my dad really resisted the Catholicism that he was raised in. So I was definitely raised with the idea that there was sort of something spiritual out there, but it wasn't contained.
Maybe a higher power, but maybe not anthropomorphic higher power, maybe just a general higher power, not like a big old man sitting on a chair.
Exactly. And as I got older, my parents returned, as they got older, they returned more deeply into faith. So now my mom really practices Judaism, and my dad died 6 years ago, but he had joined a Baptist church and actually found a lot of peace in his death through his faith. So
amazing.
There was always, faith was a thing, but religion wasn't, if that makes sense.
Totally. No, that's even a fine way to be, because I think religions are made up by humans in order to get closer to God. Sometimes they work to get us closer to God, and sometimes they don't. It depends on who we are and what's happening in our society at that moment. So religion, the origin of the word religion, re-lig, means to reconnect. Lig meaning like link, ligament. So religion wants to reconnect us. And as I say, sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. So in Christianity, in the New Testament, St. Paul wrote a letter to the Corinthians, the people who lived in Corinth by Greece. And there's a reading that is 1 Corinthians 12, that if somebody is Christian, they have probably heard this in their lives. So it goes like this. There are many gifts, but the same Spirit. There are many works, but the same Lord. And here are the manifestations of the Spirit. To one there is given through the Spirit a message of wisdom, to another a message of knowledge, to another faith, to another gifts of healing, to another miraculous powers, to another person prophecy, to another person distinguishing between spirits, speaking in tongues, and the interpretation of tongues. All these are the works of the one and same Spirit, and he distributes them to each person just as he determines.
Interesting. And is that connected to the clairs?
So that's kind of a list.
Okay.
It is. And if Christians, God bless them, but if they say, oh, we don't do that, that's not part of my religion, I just go, 1 Corinthians 12, because it really is part of our religion. In fact, if you scroll down after 1 Corinthians, you see that it depends on the translation, but St. Paul says in the old version, covet to prophecy, which is a way of saying, if you've got it, go for it. If you can do this, it's from God. So, you're supposed to go for it and work with it. It's a gift of the Spirit. It's not. Now, there are people who do things that are not that cool. And we have to work with parameters, and we have to listen and make sure that our messages are actually coming from God. And there are ways of finding that out. And that is really important to do. Otherwise, I could say, oh, God really wants me to eat that box of chocolate donuts. Like, I am so sure that he does.
I'm sure several people listening think that they get that message often.
I unfortunately do get that message kind of often, and no, it's not true.
Okay, so it's interesting to me that you did not throw away the baby with the bathwater, in the sense like you have kept the pieces of organized religion, or you've studied still the Bible. You still quote and cite things from the Bible. So how have you woven together this new expression of spirit with kind of your old or more traditional forms of learning?
Well, I can say that it's kind of like when I was a kid, and the only kids who were in my grade school in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where I grew up, were white European kids who were exactly my same age, right? There was very little diversity. There was one kid who was adopted from Vietnam, and he came into our class, but I didn't meet a person of color and speak directly to a person who wasn't white until I was probably 14, 15 years old. Wow. So I know, well, that's Minneapolis in the 1970s for you, and it's also my upbringing, or, there was an Egyptian family who lived across the street from us, okay? But it was not part of my life. It wasn't at all part of the fabric of my upbringing. And now I live in South Africa, okay? So South Africa is the opposite of what Minneapolis looked like when I was a kid.
Right.
So I'm going to connect this to what you're asking, is how do I piece together, weave together, or find out about what spirit wants with regard to religion? It's kind of like traveling in the world. As you travel, you gain information, knowledge, experience. You try kimchi, you eat with chopsticks, and that food is too spicy for me. Oh my gosh. And you learn and learn and learn and learn and learn. And that's what life is about. So religion for me has been a cumulative gift, rather than an eliminating gift or a parsing gift.
Got it. That's awesome. It's awesome. So it's just been a part of the growth of being alive. And similar to traveling, you've sort of figured out what works for you and what doesn't work for you.
Yeah. And also to see the greatness of it, to see that it's all over the place. Like, people are people, and yet there are thousands of languages. Humans are humans, and yet there are millions of cultures and cultural subgroups. And religions are religions, and they have a lot to give, and we have a lot to learn from them.
I love that approach to it. And, religion has been much a hotbed topic in our culture, in the Western world, particularly recently, because it's been layered into politics and there's been so much divisiveness around it. But if you really take it back to something you said earlier, which I love so much, is that religions are made by humans to get us closer to God. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but we're all seeking a desire to be closer to God. So given that, let's go back to I want to go back to the question around how you came to self-identify as a psychic. I'm guessing that some people listening are like, well, how the heck do you get there? And, am I one? Sometimes I have premonitions. Does that make me a psychic? So what?
The answer is yes. The answer is yes. Well, because I'm like, everybody's a psychic. So I think that everyone does have the ability to connect to God because that's how God made us. So God made us with a spiritual core, and I'll say his, but I could definitely say her. So God's main deal is to connect with us, to bring out our soul and to speak with us. But I'll say speak, but it could be to touch us, to move us, to work with us, to collaborate with us, and to cooperate with us. So everybody was created by God, and everybody has a spiritual core, and that's the deal. So I know psychic can get kind of a bad rap, like, do I work in a tent at the circus? No, I don't. When I was a kid, I went to this Catholic grade school, as I was just talking about, and there was a really, really great librarian. And I was weird, I was really geeky and really too smart for my class, and also super emotional, over emotional, and cried a lot. And I was really like kind of a crybaby, but I was always the one raising my hand like, I have the answer. I have the answer. So not a really cool combination, in grade school.
Right. I can feel for sweet little Shannon right now. My heart sees overachieving, super smart, super feeler. It's hard to grow up with that.
So these days I would probably have gotten some kind of diagnosis, but I didn't, we were just stumbling through. So I went to the library a lot, either to hide out or because I was bored. And there was a really great librarian who turned me on to the lives of the saints, which are the stories of people like Joan of God, Joan de Deus, and also like Joan of Arc. And also other heroes and heroines like Sacagawea and Clara Barton and Florence Nightingale. And she gave me these books one after the other, one after the other. Sister Mary Loretto. And I really owe Sister Mary Loretto a big hug. She's in heaven now. But for caring for me, for challenging me, for telling me that I could read, big books with no pictures when I was 7. And she really saved me.
Wow.
She really also set me on a path where when I was reading the story, do you know the story of Joan of Arc? Do you remember that one?
Minimally. Refresh it for us.
I'll just give you the minimal version anyway. So she was 14. She was French. There was a war between the French and the English. And she was a peasant. She couldn't read or anything. And she was in a field. And she got a message, hey, go talk to the current king of France. And you're going to tell him that he's going to beat the English. And this is how. And she was like, really? Okay, well, I don't think that I can do that. And then the voices, she called them her voices, led her to go to Paris and to talk to the king. And she did. And then they won. Short story. And then the priests and the bishops thought that she had too much power. So they called her a witch and they burned her at the stake. Sorry about that. So I really got switched on by the story of Joan of Arc. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to be Joan of Arc. She is for me. I get her. That's who I am. So when I was 13, we don't have a bat mitzvah, but we have a confirmation. You get to choose a saint's name. So I chose Joan of Arc.
Awesome.
Yep. That was really my person. So, but do you know that I was getting these messages and these dreams all the time when I was a kid, and I had premonitions and I had ideas, and that was not really that welcome, I have to say,
Right. Well,
why didn't they listen to the bossy 10-year-old? Why? Why not? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. So walking us through your path of how you got to really own and step into it started actually early, but you probably didn't have words for it.
Well, I had too many words, Sage, which was really the problem. Right. Because really, I was so bossy and so like, I know what to do. And these other people who were grown up were like, you can actually not tell us how to live our lives. So I thought, oh, rats. I just hadn't met my King of France, Nobody was really actually believing. So I was 33 when it actually came to fruition.
Okay, what did that look like?
That's a big gap, between 10 and
I know you had
33.
to live with voices and people thinking you were weird and bossy for 20 some years.
So I mostly just drank a lot, and that's not even a joke.
Okay.
But a lot of people go into chemical dependency around, I have spiritual gifts and nobody's listening to me. And so I thought, why don't I just be normal? I know, I'll just drink. So
Right.
I really did for a long time, just drink.
And you drank and you
when
traveled. I mean, it sounds like you were probably
Yes.
doing some of those traveling then, right? And in my experience of traveling, there's a seeking there. You know, people who'd love to travel are usually very curious humans. That's me. I've been to about 20 countries, I think.
Right on.
You've got me doubled plus some. But it has always been and continues to be fueled by my desire to understand the world and human potential and super curiosity about, you know, other ways of existing. And so drinking and traveling, and you were sort of, it sounds to me like you were
they go
numbing
hand
and
in hand.
seeking. Yeah.
Right. International drinking career.
Right.
When I was 33, I was working for an NGO as a writer, which was one of the best jobs I ever had. It was so amazing.
Wow.
And I was going from, that's really how I got to travel a lot too. I was going from country to country and village to village and doing case studies like, how many children have you fed? How many houses have you built? You know, let's analyze your program and see all the good that you're doing. And so I got to meet really inspiring people also, social entrepreneurs who are doing amazing things in the world. So I was on a conference in Egypt. And it was in Egypt and it was in the Sinai Desert. Okay, we're getting a bit topical now. And I was meditating in the Sinai and I heard a voice that was outside of myself. So it wasn't the voice that you hear in your head that says, where are your keys? It was a voice from outside of myself that sounded kind of like James Earl Jones. And it said, now it's time for you to help other people.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what we call the big voice.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I had been practicing kinesiology. Do you know kinesiology? Have you ever been to a kinesiologist?
No, but I'm familiar. Yes.
Yeah.
Denise-
You know more psychics than you know. Yeah. Kinesiologists are also psychics. So in kinesiology, they do muscle testing, right? To do food allergies and those kinds of things. Have you ever seen that done?
Yep. Totally.
So I was teaching myself how to do kinesiology on myself. So I was using finger muscle testing to say, should I drink this water or should I have this bread or should I eat eggs or whatever? And then I realized that I could get yes, no's off of it. So I started, when I got that message, now it's time for you to help other people. I started asking questions about other people's lives that they were asking me. So I was on this conference with 35 people from 35 countries who were really young and cool and smart. And they all had big lives and they all wanted to ask big questions. So one said, should I go find my father's family? Or should I marry my girlfriend? Or, do I have a serious health issue? Or what? All of these great things. And I was getting messages by just getting yes, no, yes, no, yes, no off of my kinesiology finger muscle testing. And they were saying that the answers were accurate and helpful. So I went home and I quit my job and I opened up a practice.
Oh my gosh. Incredible. So you really had this incredible, obviously divine experience in the desert in Egypt.
Yeah.
And then you did some smart business, which is you did some market testing with the community you were with,
With really interesting people. These were not
right.
just your run-of-the-mill people. These were the coolest people that you've ever met in your life. You would love them.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? A group of 35 people from 35 countries out to make a difference in the world. I'm already having my own little squeal fest in my heart over here. Really, yeah. And how beautiful that they engaged with you in that way. And
some did and some didn't. Some said, and I learned so much just from those first 3 days of my practice. Some said, I can talk to my angels by myself. And I said, whoa, of course you can. In fact, that's what I should be doing. I should be helping you talk to your angels by yourself. And he said, but I want to do it by myself without you. And then he walked away. I said, okay, fine. You can do it without me. Because why should someone become dependent on an intermediary or a translator? So brilliant lesson in even, day one. And because I had trained, I kind of skipped this part, but because I had trained as a language translator, I was really easily able to translate messages so quickly and into multiple languages that they became very accurate.
Oh, fascinating. So you had studied multiple languages and actually trained
French, Spanish, Portuguese, German, Italian, Czechoslovakian, to various levels of fluency. Some I'm not fluent in and some I'm really fluent in.
But that's why you said João so well. Yeah.
João de Deus.
Yes, you say it beautifully. Yeah. That was incredibly useful because you were already kind of had the conduit open. You were already acclimated into translating messages.
Being a translator.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. That's right. And also, when you translate between different languages, it gets sticky. Like you say happy and the other person actually means content, or you say angry and the other person actually just means irritated. So there are different registers of language. And when angels are speaking angel, they are actually speaking angel. So they're not necessarily speaking English. And that's why it becomes a dialogue, and a really fascinating dialogue between you, the client, and your own angels and guides, because it's a negotiation, just like a translation.
Amazing. Okay. So you are so fascinating, Shannon, because, I'm like, you say these things as if you're incredibly bright. You're very well studied, right? And you're like, quote unquote, normal. But yet you're speaking of angels and guides, like as if you're talking about apples and bananas. Mm-hmm. And I love that. So let's pause for a second and talk about, what do you even mean when you say angels and guides? There are people listening who are going to be like, of course I know, but other people, that's perhaps a new way of thinking of angels and guides. Guides, they're thinking of a tour guide, and angels, they're thinking of Cupid or something with wings, whatever they were taught or conditioned to believe angels were, in their upbringing. So can you break that down for us a little bit? Angels and guides, what that means in your translation?
Sure. In fact, I would like to say that I would like to study that even further. So I would like to know more about that, and I'd like to take, deeper theology classes. I don't really want to do the whole angel card reading, learning about angels in that way. I actually want to really learn about different religions and the way that they consider what are angels and what are guides. But I can tell you what I know. And so, I only can tell you what I know so far. So Great. Angels are emanations of God. So God is God, and God is like a huge vortex, volcano, tornado of light and energy, for example, perhaps. And so then God sends down emanations of himself or herself that look like humans, but are actually just zap, 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 light things. Okay, how's that for technical? Light things. But in the Old Testament, when Abraham and Sarah were trying to have a child, and, Sarah became very, very old and she had stopped having her periods. And then these 3 men appeared in the desert at their tent and spoke magically about Sarah being able to conceive. They were angels. And so they looked like humans, but they were actually just pieces of God that had broken off from God and were there to talk to Abraham and Sarah. So if you think about a nuclear power plant, I hope you don't think too much about nuclear power plants, but let's think about a coal plant or a nuclear power plant or a hydroelectric plant. And then you see those big pylons out in the fields, and then there are the wires coming off of them, and then there are the little wires, and then the little wires go down to your house, and then you plug in your phone and you charge your phone in your wall, That is the same electricity that was at the coal plant, right? It's the same electricity, but the voltage is much, 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 much lighter. So I don't want you to stick your finger in there, but if you stuck your finger in there, you would get zapped. But if you threw yourself into a coal plant, things would go very wrong.
Right.
So the same idea of God and angels is the difference between a coal plant and the plug in the side of your wall. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Whereas guides are something different. Guides are a different species altogether. Guides are humans who were here, who are no longer here, but who are not your grandparents. I mean, not your particular grandparents' Sage. They're not anybody's grandparents. They're more like professionally assigned to you. So they're more like teachers or professors at the university who happen to be specialized in what you need. So on your team, you could have a doctor, a psychologist, a midwife, a business coach, whatever Sage needs right now for what Sage is doing.
Wow. Okay. So everybody has their own angels and guides.
Correct. Well, let's say everybody has a team of guides. In charge of the guides is an angel. You could call that your guardian angel. Your guardian angel is usually with you not only in this lifetime, but in many lifetimes, whereas your team of guides comes on and off when you finish a project. So just like your grade school teachers leave you, and then you go to high school, and then you have high school teachers, then you have university professors, same with guides.
Guides can come and go depending on the stage of life you're at and what you need at that time.
Mm-hmm. You might need a marriage counselor. You might need, a health coach, whatever you need.
Okay, got it. Oh my gosh, this is fascinating. So, and some people I'm sure have challenged you on this, right? And are like, well, Shannon, how do you know that's even so? Like, how have you come to...
Because they tell me, yeah.
Right. So...
Because they tell me that's what they're doing. And because I can do this kind of blind testing thing when I'm working with a client that I've never worked for before. So here's Caroline. And then I say, if one of her questions is, who are the guides that are working with me? I don't call them by any of those fancy names, like Ed Kaziakal or whatever. I just say, okay, you have this guide who's helping you fall pregnant. And then she says, oh yeah, I am trying to get pregnant. Okay, and you have this other guide who's working with you on your financial woes because you're carrying a lot of debt. And she says, oh yeah, I am carrying a lot of debt. So that's how I can know.
Got it. So the guides speak to you. You talk to the humans, the people that you're working with, your clients, and the clients confirm that your information is accurate. And if
I'm about 85% accurate. So yeah, I'm not 100. Like, I don't know what your address is, for example. I don't know what your license plate says on your car. And that's kind of okay. Like, I don't really need to know that.
Right. That's not really going to help the world. For you to know my address, or for you to use your energy to know my address isn't really, you know what I mean? It's not of greatest service in a sense.
Exactly.
So the way that you kind of have like field tested this for the disbelievers, I guess I'm like thinking of the disbelievers, right? Like, I'm actually the kind of person who can get on board pretty easily and try things out and be like, I'm willing to, I'm open to my own growth and health and happiness infinitely and the people I love boundlessly. So I'm willing to try things. But I know there are people who are like, I'm not sure about that. So you've kind of...
You know what? I don't care. Like, that's okay. And he can think that for the rest of his life, and that's fine. And maybe he can be totally, totally happy. Like, the people that I come from, Minnesota, right? They tend to be, and I mean this in a really good way, they tend to be scientific and materialist, but I don't mean greedy. I mean, they tend to think about, what kind of bird is that? And look at the river and look at the nature and, when is the eclipse happening? They're very much into real stuff that you can see,
so you can
feel.
See and touch.
Well,
right. Okay.
Let's cook. How do we bake bread? What is the best recipe for baking bread? I also find that very interesting. And I live in the invisible world, which is not that interesting to them. And that's okay.
I love that. So it's kind of like you're not out there trying to convince people that this is so. You're like, if they found their own way to happiness, good on them.
Because didn't God also create baguette? God also created baguette. And that's
Thank God. The baguette is a fabulous thing.
Really. And squirrels, maybe baguette and squirrels. Also good.
Right. I don't know how. I'm not so into squirrels, but I'll go with a baguette. My mother is like terrified of squirrels. So I think she conditioned me slightly to run from them. But all of nature. So, so great. I love that. You just sort of don't waste your energy trying to convince as so. You kind of feel like everybody's given their gifts and they all are finding their own path and that works for you. And the people who find their way to you are the ones who need to find their way to you to help them communicate with their guides and angels.
I even designed my ideal client template to not include skeptics because it was just tiresome for me.
Totally.
I would say, okay, so your relationship with your mom is like this. And then he would say, yeah, it is kind of. And I would say, okay, and your financial situation is like this. And he would say, yeah, that's pretty much right. And I said, okay, so you have angels and guides. No, I don't have angels and guides. Oh, well, all right then. Bye.
Right.
Right. Don't.
Right. If you're not willing to listen to the information, it's just not a match. I love that.
That's fine. Okay.
Yeah, and that's fine. Like, no animosity. So as you did share with your Minnesota family, your Catholic Minnesota family. So this Naked Conversations, right? Like in my book, it's called Naked Communication.
Yes.
And then the podcast is an extension with the Naked Conversations. It's really about being fully self-expressed and showing up in your life as the most whole and honest and true version of yourself so that you can have meaningful relationships and make an impact in a way that it matters to you. And you are such a great example of that because there's something going on here where you just said, finally, it took until 33 and you'd sort of suffered with it in some ways prior to really say, like, this is who I am and this is what I'm here to offer. So I'm wondering how that landed when you then sort of made that declaration or proclamation in your community or family.
It did not. Basically, the answer to that question is it did not.
It didn't land.
It did not land. And it still hasn't landed. So sometimes my parents will describe what I do as she's a writer or she's a journalist or, oh yeah, she lives in South Africa. Yeah, what's she up to? Oh, a lot of different stuff. So sometimes they'll say she's a healer once in a while. And I love my family and that's okay. They're just, once in a while, my dad will say, I think she's some kind of witch doctor. I'm like, okay, no, not really.
But he's sort of trying to put himself closer into the space.
I really love my parents. My mom was a scientist and now she's a computer teacher. And my dad was a lawyer until he retired. And so they're very, very left brain, really smart and really into, what's real. Although they are religious. They were brought up religious. But
right, which is always interesting, right? When you can have that sense of religious faith, but also be somebody who likes to stay in the concrete or the provable.
Sure.
It's interesting to me. We're dichotomies. We're messy.
Uh-huh.
So you had these conversations
we have a
and
great team together and we love each other and we understand each other. But if I go into, I had a dream about this yesterday, they'll say, oh, that's nice.
so there isn't animosity, but there's just not an understanding.
I would think that that's what it is. So when my parents came over to visit in South Africa and I brought them onto one of my radio shows. So the way that I work here in South Africa and around the world is that I do a lot of radio and people call in and ask questions and I give them answers right away without any background information. And the answers are detailed, specific, and accurate. That's my main way of promoting what I do and also doing community service. So I brought my mom and dad onto one of my shows, but I didn't have them talk. I just had them listen. And this woman called in and said, should I continue with the building project that I have building this new garage? And I said, well, I'm getting the message that the German builder that you have is really good and you should just continue working with him. And she said, well, he's not German. And I said, his name is Heinrich. And she said, yes, his name is Heinrich, but he's Afrikaans, he's Dutch, he's not German. And I was like, oh, geez. Could you be more argumentative and detailed? Right? So afterwards, okay, so I even got his name, which in psychic world is very
amazing.
Very hard to do. And so afterwards, I took my parents to lunch and I said, so what did you think? Especially the one about Heinrich, huh? That was pretty cool. And my dad said, well, I think anybody who's kind of sensitive could, tune into that and do something like that. And I was like, really? That is so hard to do. Anyway.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. But you know what? You didn't take it, it sounds to me. So, okay, so for those listening who aren't psychic and this isn't their jam, there's always been a time probably when you've had or you've wanted to, and that's why you're listening to the show, share something with somebody that you cared about that you weren't sure they would understand or that you feared they would judge you for, or like maybe you need to tell somebody you're going to get a divorce or that you're going to change career paths or the way that you're not going to marry in a traditional sense, right? There's all these hard conversations we have to have with people. So you have so much lightness around it. Like, I would love to just hear a little bit more about how you've danced in, this is your heart, right? You sort of hid and you were the little girl hiding in the library.
Yep.
And now you're fully out there expressing yourself and being who you are. And you're not getting the external validation, let's say, that so many people seek or hope for when they share something from their heart with people they love. And how are you being with that? That's, I think, a universal challenge that people face.
I really love how you brought it into other people's experiences and how we each have to have those conversations sometimes about something that's hard, but something that's really important to us. And that's really cool. Thanks for extrapolating that, Sage. It really makes sense to me. So I decided that my boss is God and my boss is not my parents. So who I'm working for is actually God. And the validation that I need is going to come from God. Also, I get paid for what I do, which is great. And I am also kind of famous on this side. I'm famous in South Africa. But if you really wanted to dig a little bit deeper, since we're doing the naked conversation, you could ask me the question, which would be really hard for me to answer. Oh, so if you're so famous in South Africa, why aren't you famous in America, where you're from? Which is kind of like hiding in the library. So I am a little bit still hiding in the library because I live on the other side of the planet.
Yes. I love your honesty.
Well, it's true. And I have been doing podcasts like yours, and I am doing more radio in the States. And my goal, which is, probably within the next year or two, is to be able to move into the States, back and forth between the States and South Africa, and be okay with being what I am and who I am in America. So I do actually have some trepidation around that.
Got it. I love that so much. And I can't wait for you to come back here. It sounds awesome.
Thanks.
I will welcome you with open arms on my end. But so there's something there too about how we take risks safely. It sounds like an oxymoron, but I think that that's been a theme with actually the question I forgot to ask you when I start all my podcasts. I asked this question, and for whatever reason, probably because we were having technical challenges, I forgot to ask you is, what does courage mean to you? And I love this because it took us here anyway, which is, how we step into ourselves, the way you're stepping fully into your psychic gifts. In some ways, it's in stages. Like, it's a little safer to do it there than here.
Yep, because I am a stranger in a strange land. I'm accepted as an interesting person, and I have a little bit of status because I'm American, and that's cool to be a foreigner. Have you ever seen Trevor Noah on the dance? So he's awesome. South African, and he's awesome, and he's funny, handsome, intelligent, and all of these great things. And he can kind of poke fun at American politics because he's not American, so he can say things and he can be quite outraged because he's South African. So I'm a little bit like the psychic Trevor Noah of South Africa because I'm American and I'm here and I do a lot of radio and some TV. And people just think that I'm, funny and great and all of these good things. So I think hiding in plain sight is important. I think, as you said, testing on safe ground, which
Yeah.
might be, like if someone were gay and then they were gay in another town, I think they would feel, maybe it would be easier to start there or,
Yes,
yeah,
yes, yes,
anything like that.
totally. And that's a great analogy in some ways because in the LGBTQI community, like there have been meccas, there have been bastions of safety, that people have found themselves going to, also gravitating to, so that they can kind of have their own experience in a way that, allows their expression safely. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I know a little bit about that.
Right.
So, yeah,
So that's how you
that's true.
Okay. So that leads me to this question. 48 countries.
Oh, are we going to answer?
48
What does courage mean to you? So,
see, I keep avoiding that. Tell me.
I'm going to say a quite unpopular or unexpected answer, which is that courage to me means deep obedience, but it doesn't mean obedience to any cultural norm or any figure of authority. It means deepest obedience to my inner highest self.
Oh my gosh. Tell us a little bit more. Say a little bit more about that. I love that.
Sure. So I love languages, and I just learned the etymology of the word obedience. So if you break it down, it's ob, and then edience comes from audio. So what it really means is listen up. Audio, obedience. And to listen up means to listen up, means listen up to spirit. And it also means listen up means listen and do. It's not just I'm hearing you, it's I'm hearing and I'm doing. So I hear and I act, and I put into action the things that have been given to me to do. So, I have tons of stories of that. One of the stories was when I was studying in Rome when I was 19, and I had this really strong feeling that I had to kneel down by the side of my bed, which is not at all how I pray. And the message that I got was a one-word message, because God actually likes to just speak in one word or one phrase. He doesn't just go on and on and on and like me. He doesn't rattle on. And he said, teach. The word was teach. And I thought, whoa, yeah, right. I was a French major and I wasn't really digging it. And so I switched to be an English major with education. And then that led me overseas because my first job out of university was teaching overseas. And that led me to all the different countries. So it was perfect advice. Yes. And even though the education classes were kind of, naff, I really didn't like them at all. They were kind of stupid. They gave me that piece of paper that allowed me to get out and see what I needed to see. So even then you got like
the perfect answer. The perfect guidance.
But I had to obey, right? Because if I had really followed my own ego going, oh, those classes are so dumb, then I would have not gotten the degree and then I would have been stuck at home.
I love that. Obedience. Listen up. And I also love this piece. I often say something to the effect of, I read it in my book. I can't remember even how I phrase it, which is funny because I wrote it like a bajillion times in there. But inspiration without participation just doesn't get you the results that you want. So, it's one thing to feel inspired to listen to this podcast, for example, be like, oh my gosh, I really need to like tune into my own intuition, or I really need to have that conversation that's hard. But if we don't then follow up on that, it doesn't get you the outcome you desire, which is deeper relationship or the opportunities that you're seeking. So I love that so much. Obedience is listen up and then like hear it and act both.
I do. Yeah, you got to do. You know that old song that goes, you got to do when the spirit says
I don't know that one.
You know that one? It's really old. It's like, you got to sing when the spirit says sing. You got to sing when the spirit says sing. When the spirit says sing, you got to sing right along. And then you put in different verbs to that. You got to wait a hymn? When the spirit says wait. You got to move. Oh, yeah, it's an old spiritual song.
Cool. No, there you go. Mm-hmm. There it is. So you have written a book to help people kind of in this experience for themselves. Can you tell us a little bit about it? It's called Guided, I believe. And tell us why you wrote that and what people can learn from it.
So it's a half and half book. The first half is case studies about people who came into my office and the funny questions that they asked and the funny answers that I gave them. And some of them are actually really funny. But the point of it is that I was trying to show by the questions and answers how to tap into your own clairs. So I would say, and then I smelled something and then I told her about the smell and then she identified with it. It is a little bit hard to teach psychic ability. It's more like I need to tell you how to do it and then you need to practice it. So I gave a lot of examples in the first half. And the second half was a spiritual autobiography up until that point, which was 2007 when I wrote the book. And so a lot of stuff has happened since then. But it was some of the stories that I've just been telling you about getting from place to place and how I felt guided and how I moved and grew and learned. And I love my book. I really prefer the audio version, mostly because I love to talk. So it's a 5-hour audio and it's available on audible.com.
Oh, lovely. So if somebody was curious, right? Like they wanted to know more about how you came to do this, or maybe they're wondering if this, if they've heard whispers themselves, this is a great way to explore further. And then in the work that you do, I first of all also just love that you say, I'm kind of famous in South Africa. I'm kind of a big deal. And
I'm called South Africa's top psychic. And somebody wrote in and said, was there a contest and I didn't get invited? And I said, no, there was no contest. I just have the biggest audience. So that's why I call it, because I had 8 million listeners. And so they were like, oh, okay. So you're top, in terms of numbers. All right, fine. Then he didn't feel so competitive.
Isn't it amazing how we can't help our egos? You know what I mean? It's all of us are just battling that all the time. I totally.
I got invited to be on a psychic reality TV show, like a Big Brother TV show. And it was in Ukraine. And I got the email and I thought it was spam. Please come to Ukraine and we want you to be on this psychic Big Brother. And I said, okay, I'll go. So I went for 3 weeks. And it was really wild. It was very, very strange and amusing. And yeah, I really loved it. But I don't think that there is a best psychic. I think that there are accurate psychics and there are helpful psychics. And I think to be kind, helpful, and accurate, those are the things that we should judge by.
Accurate, and helpful. I love that. I also want to tell you that I have an expression that I've coined called experience collectors. And you are definitely an experience collector. I love that you're like, oh yeah, I'm just going to go to the Ukraine and
definitely
be on the show
for 3 weeks. It was way out beyond the IKEA. Do you know what I mean? It was in the outer ring of Kiev. And then we had to take 2 trams to get into the center of Kiev. And I said, let's go, guys, let's go. And there were all these psychics from all over the world. And they go, we'd rather watch cable. And I'm like, come on, we're in Kiev. This is the first and only time we'll ever be in Kiev.
It's amazing.
So yeah, you're right. I'm an experience.
You're an experience collector.
Give me $1,000 and I'll just get as far away as I can. I'll go to Vietnam for sure.
That is amazing. Well, that would be in my definition of, courage, is that piece too, of just being willing to take those kinds of outside of your comfort zone risks. So I want to know, for the people who are listening, what is it like to work with you? What does that even look like? So I call you and I'm like, how do people find you and how do you actually work with them? What would that experience be like?
Sure. Well, I hope it's a pleasant experience. I think for most people, it's a pleasant experience. I have a website and they go to my website and they look at the different offerings. The basic offering is a 1-hour phone call. And in that 1-hour phone call, it's rather heavily formatted. So I have you, the client, ask 10 questions of your own choosing, but the questions have to be about yourself. So Sage has to ask about Sage. Sage cannot ask, should my mother move to Massachusetts? Because that's not Sage's decision. So Sage has to ask, should I, can I, how can I, what should I do about this? And the thing has to be within your hands that you have agency over. And the questions can be really also about how can I develop myself spiritually? Are these things that are happening to me, are these spiritual things and should I work with them? So the idea is to draw you closer to God. I really, really want you to become a saint. I'm a saint maker. So a saint is a holy person who is whole, a complete person. And that's actually my goal. So the little part that I would play in your life, the 1-hour role, if we only work together once, if we don't get into some kind of mentorship thing, would be, this is what your angels sound like. These are the problems that they want you to solve. Here's how they want you to solve them. They want you to open that bank account. They want you to sell that house. They want you to stop talking to that friend. They want you to stop eating cookies, but they also want you to do this and this and this and this kind of meditation. And they want you to read this book and do this kind of thing. And you're waking up at 3 a.m. That's not okay. And so they'll cover everything about your life, but you need to prompt with 10 specific you-based questions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, amazing. So they come with 10 specific me-based questions. And then from that, you really tune in to hear what their guides and angels advise. And you give them clear messages based on the communications you receive, right?
Lots and lots and lots and lots and lots. And the things that people should listen to, whether they come to me or whether they come to any spiritual advisor or a psychic, is don't feed the psychic. So don't tell the psychic stuff. Just say, should I move to New York? But don't say, should I move to New York? Because you know what? I've had this boyfriend for 6 years and we're kind of on and off and I'm wondering. Okay, don't tell the psychic anything. Because even good psychics will then use that information subconsciously, unconsciously. Just say, should I move to New York and why?
Got it. Leave it as open-ended and clean as possible.
Right.
Okay, that's so cool. I think it's so cool. And so you work with all different kinds of people, or do you primarily work with business owners, or who do you serve?
Yeah, I would say mainly 30 to 50 entrepreneurs and executives. I mean, but it can range from, and especially when I'm on the radio, I can work with anybody who calls in.
Oh,
and
yeah,
that's
that's
so
cool.
fun.
Yeah.
Oh, we just had a real, I'm on local radio a lot. So this week, it was 2 days ago, this woman called in, and I'm working with a great radio host named Pabi, and I'm picking up a piece of paper and I'm writing the word pizza on it. And I show it to her. You can't hear it because it's on radio. And I just show her the word pizza, and she smiles because she knows that that's going to be the next answer to the next call. So the caller calls in and says, should I give up on this relationship? And the answer is, you should, because it's holding you back, but that's not your main answer. You really need to buy a pizza franchise like a Domino's. And she screams. The caller screams, but I mean screams. And like we have to pull off our earphones because she's screaming. And they go, are you okay? Are you okay? And she goes, I work at a Domino's. So I go, okay, well, that's good that you're working there. You should actually buy it. So you should get together a collective of other people. You should save up your money and you should buy it. But it was just like really funny because I had written the word pizza. Then the call was about pizza. And then she said she worked at the pizza place. So Pabi then explained that to the listeners, and the listeners were able to feel the proofiness of it.
Yes. And do you ever get scared that you'll tell this woman to do that and then like she'll go do it and it'll flop or something? Do you feel a responsibility from the guides or the angels, or you just convey it and then they take it and they do what they will?
There you go. You got it in the second half there, because let's say that she did it, but she didn't do it well, or let's say she didn't do it. So I do have people calling me the next year and going, I never did that thing that you said that I should do. And I said, okay, well, that's it. The window there is closed. You had that great opportunity and you didn't take it. You have free choice. You have free will. You can do what you want with your life, but you shoulda.
Right.
I don't really try to rub their nose into it, but that was a great opportunity. Why didn't you do it?
Right. Okay. Well, that's actually leads to this question, right? So if we're all divinely guided, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Why do we sometimes feel like stuck or lost? Or the one that always comes up for me, and maybe this is too heavy for this call, you give us the brief version, but when things happen that are so unfair to me in the world, like children with cancer, or it's always about children suffering, because I really feel like children haven't been around long enough to have deserved any lessons like that,
Mm-hmm.
I lose some faith, right? Like I get like lost in this is just messed up, and so I feel I lose faith, but I'm also seeking in those moments of despair, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So Can you speak to that a little bit? Because I know that's when that happens to everybody, when they feel, like something is just unjust or wrong in their lives and they're suffering. They want divine guidance, but they doubt their divine guidance even more in that moment.
Okay, so if we were to play this tape back, this is how I heard you say it, and you can correct me if I got it wrong. I feel like when bad things happen in the world, when bad things happen to me, like children who have cancer. Okay, so Sage, you had cancer at one point in your life.
Yes.
Do you feel like you're talking about children who had cancer, or do you feel like you're talking about your time when you had cancer?
Children, because that's been in my life recently as well. It's a child with cancer. And I guess both, to be honest, because I sort of felt like a child. I was 23. I wasn't a child, but
yes.
I still felt like, whoa, I'm doing I'm a do-gooder, I'm an idealist, I'm out there trying to change the world, right? So it's both. It's at an innocence stage of life,
Right.
Maybe that's the universal.
And Ram Dass, the spiritual teacher, he had a stroke. And he goes, don't they know who I am? How can I have a stroke? Didn't they get the memo?
Exactly.
Like, I am Ram Dass. He laughed at himself about it. And in fact, that is really the answer, is that life is pain. Life is suffering. And the old thing about pain is, for sure, we're going to get pain, and suffering or agonizing over it, that's the optional part.
Yeah.
So everybody has bad things happen to them. Why do bad things happen to good people? Actually, bad things happen to everybody.
Right.
And good things happen to everybody too. So that's, when I'm speaking like that, that's too cliched. So what I would like to do is to zoom back. I'd like to zoom out, and I'd like to say a bigger, longer view is that even though children get cancer and worse and are sexually abused and
all of that, right?
Really, really bad stuff happening in humanity. And that has always happened in humanity. And we really, really have always had slavery, and we really, really always have had wars and people killing each other and rape and all of these really bad things.
Mm-hmm.
This is part of the human condition. And what are we called to do? We're called to do our part to stop it, prevent it, and lessen it, and to help people through it, and to comfort them afterwards, and to rescue the refugees and to turn to our neighbors. So we are called to make things better for ourselves if we're the ones who are getting sick or hurt, for our neighbors if they're the ones who are getting hurt or sick or attacked or crosses being burned on their lawns. We are the ones who are supposed to go douse those crosses and take them down. This is what we are really being called to do. So life, if you zoom way, 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 way out, is a series of very bad events and a series of very good events. And in the end, it does add up that that's what human life is. So the happy times are there. They might seem like blips on the screen, but they're there, and that's what it's all about. So zooming even farther out, I truly believe that we have more than one life to live. And I truly believe that if a child, like I had a miscarriage, so I thought, okay, what happened to that soul? Why did that soul come in and then not make it? And what does that have to do with me? And the messages that I got were, yeah, he'll come back, another time. Okay. They were a little bit casual about it. And I was like, how can you be so casual about something that's so important to me? And they said, it's important, but it's not that important. And I thought, easy for you to say.
Right. Right.
So they don't mean to be mean about it. They don't mean to be cruel about it, but they're just quite detached in a good Buddhist way of being detached. And life after life after life after life. If we've lived 1,000 lives, we've seen it all.
Yes, 100%. Right. You, however, continue to listen, even in times where you're angry or sad. That's the piece. Like, how can people maintain their connection to their guides, even when they're in doubt? And I think you just answered that it's perspective.
Well, I actually think that when you're banging your head against the floor and you're sobbing, that is really, and I have been, of course, at certain times in my life, been that desperate.
Yeah.
That is not the time to ask for detailed information. And I always do. I always say, but now what is the plan? And what am I going to do? What about next Tuesday? And what about after the exam? And am I going to pass? Okay, that is not the right time to ask for detailed information. If you remember the beginning of Eat, Pray, Love, remember that?
Yeah.
Bathroom floor. So Liz Gilbert is banging her head on the bathroom floor. And finally the voice just says, go to bed, Liz. And she's going, but what about my marriage? And the voice just says, go to bed, Liz. And that is the right message. So sometimes it's just, we're here. Stop crying.
Yeah.
Go to bed.
Take care. Yeah. Take care. I love that. Shannon, thank you so much for all of your honesty and your wisdom. And you're just like this incredible balance of being grounded and being connected. It's really, really a pleasure. Thank you for popping my psychic cherry. I can't believe
it's super pleasure. You're a fantastic interviewer, and I really felt quite cared for and quite held during your whole process.
Oh, good.
So I wish
so
you
glad.
Much success, many, many continued and interesting interviewees coming for you, and that you develop, which you already have a good connection to your inner voice, that you develop even more courage to act, listen up, and go forward. Amen.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let's keep this conversation going over at sagebhabs.com/Facebook, our private free Facebook community where we have deeper conversations, the opportunity to connect with other amazing women like you who are asking these questions around how to live courageous, fully self-expressed lives. sagebhabs.com/Facebook. Can't wait to hear from you over there. And if you have any pressing questions or a way in which this show is making a difference in your life, please email me directly, sage@sagebhabs.com. I'd love to hear from you. See you next time.